Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick, and we're finishing off the Giants' off-season activities. Mandatory minicamp just wrapped up, and we got Dan Duggan came on. We talked for about 40 to 45 minutes. Justin, how are you doing?
Hey, Bobby Skinner. I'm doing well. I'm going to see a Charlie Puth concert tonight. Do you know who that is?
I think so, because didn't you go to a concert of that before?
I went, so I actually won, I got to see a private screening or private live show of his new album that he played. So I won something like that, but I paid money for this.
Oh, okay. But I think I've heard that name and it was from you. So
yeah, I'm excited. Radio City, my first time at Radio City Music Hall.
Bring the draft back to Radio City, by the way. Really should bring that back to Radio City.
I'll try and accomplish that today.
Before we get into this Duggan interview, I feel like I have to comment on this. I got so freaking triggered by our fantasy draft comments.
Yeah, you did, man. I thought it was good for content that you did.
Part of it, rightfully so, that I got triggered. But part of it, you know how shitty I felt when I was fighting people in the Instagram comments. Not just disagreeing with them, being like, hey, why don't you learn how to read, dummy? Yeah. And then someone commented and was like, hey, the graphic says all-time Giants fantasy team, and yeah. I just melted right there. I was like, oh no, the TikTok, oh no, yep. that was my brain. Oh my god, this is gonna happen for the rest of the day. People are gonna think we're idiots, and kinda rightfully so. But even then on Twitter it shouldn't happen, because in Twitter you read the caption every time of a tweet, and people were just like, no, and that's where I will push back a little bit, Justin. It's like, man, you may think we're dumb, but did you think we were dumb enough to just leave freaking Lawrence Taylor off of our teams? And then some people were saying, they were looking at it and being like, we just picked our best of the best and didn't draft it. This guy picked Olivier Vernon over Michael Strahan. It's like, come on, man, think that, you know what? Maybe they're not total morons and they did a draft. It was very, very frustrating. And also, Snacks screwed up some of my arguments by taking DJ Fluker, who played 9 games for the Giants. So Snacks screwed us a little bit too.
Yeah, and people also really like Snacks' team.
It's the 07 team. The 07 team is the most romantic. 11 was Eli at his best. 07 is just, you love every single guy in that roster.
People were saying that Snacks' O-line was better than ours, which was kind of crazy. I know I messed up the guards and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, my approach is, number one, I feel bad that because I've been in that situation where I've just been really frustrated by people. But then my approach is, it's the middle of June. Even if we put out something that's wrong on a graphic, but it gets people talking, fine. That's what this time of the year is for. This time of the year, hey, I disagree with this, I disagree with that. What's going on here? What's going on with that? Everybody that listens to the show clearly got it, what we were about and what we were doing, and that's how we weed out the people that listen, the people that don't. But
we want to get the people that don't to listen.
That's right.
And I was losing my mind, but it was fun. By the end of the day, I was just having fun with it. I quote tweeted one guy who said no LT, no Banks, and I was just like, fuck you.
And that's why that's one of the reasons why our Instagram, we cannot monetize on our Instagram, because I think the early days of us going after people.
It's because we did promoted Instagram. We did promotions on Instagram stories, and we didn't tag it as promotion.
Oh.
It was the NASCAR thing.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought it was because we harassed people on our early Instagram days.
Nope, it was because the NASCAR thing.
Okay, well that can get fixed. I feel better about that than if our account was flagged for harassment.
Nope. Let's get into this Duggan interview, but if you haven't already heard, the leaders in below the waist grooming are traveling north of your South Pole with their revolutionary Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Wow. Plus they've now launched the brand new Weed Whacker 2.0. Manscaped now has a brand new nose and ear hair trimmer. Brand new. Not old, not previously owned. Brand new. Time for you to upgrade your toolbox by going to manscaped.com and using your code GIANTS for 20% off plus free shipping. The kit starts with a beard hedger, a waterproof cordless trimmer, has a rotary wheel. It gives you up to 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons, which, by the way, is a pain in the ass if you live like that. The Pro Kit also comes with beard shampoo and conditioner, Manscaped's beard oil, and caps it off with the beard balm. So my bearded friends, or mustache, I could use it for my mustache. You need this. The Pro Beard Kit also comes with the 3 free gifts: a beard brush, comb, and scissors to ensure your beard is ready to impress. Also try the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 for full body grooming. So get 20% off and free shipping with our code GIANTS at manscaped.com. Always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. You'll be glad you did. And here's Dan Duggan. All right, we're wrapping up minicamp, OTAs. It's been a long session. Actually, it's been a shorter session because they canceled a couple practices because of smoke, and then they had their barbecue today. Dan Duggan of The Athletic. Duggan, we're getting ready to go on summer break. Do you have any plans?
Yeah, getting the hell away from the Giants and Twitter and all this stuff for like the one time a year. We're able to kind of unplug, other than the Saquon Barkley thing looming over everything, which really kind of sucks that that's right in the middle of my summer break. But I'll be on the Cape, Massachusetts. I think that's a Monday, so I'll have to check out and actually do a little work that day. But otherwise, I'm planning to step away for these next couple of weeks.
Oh, so the deadline is on a Monday. That's actually, I mean, obviously you just said it sucked, but that works perfectly for me and Justin. It's like, all right, we got something to record for a Tuesday podcast.
You gonna see Dave Gettleman in the Cape?
It's very funny. I go to the same town every year, and that's where his Cape house is.
Yeah, I
think he's on like kind of the other side of town. I have not crossed paths. That would be a very interesting meeting, but we have not crossed paths down there. I go every summer, but I haven't seen him yet.
I mean, I'm sure you have his number. Why don't you shoot him a text right now?
What would that interaction be like?
That's a great question. We didn't have a lot of great interactions when he's on the job. I don't know if a few years out would change things. I don't know. He's talking about someone I just had no relationship with. I think that's probably obvious that probably just my coverage. It wasn't like we were close or anything like that. So I don't know. I mean, I would be, I would say hi to him and try to be respectful about things, but I have no idea how. He might just say, screw everybody from his time here.
I think there might be a pause, a point, and a smile on his end. Like, is that you?
That'd be reasonable. Yeah, that'd be reasonable. I don't think we'd sit down and spend a night together reminiscing or anything.
I would hope you wouldn't spend the night together. That'd be weird.
All right, so we're finishing up minicamp and OTAs, and we don't get to be there. We're reading the Giants.com website, and obviously those are gonna leave out information. But you guys have been there. There for the mandatory minicamp, OTAs, I think once a week. What have you come out of it like being surprised about? And it doesn't have to be like this guy's great or like personnel wise. Like, what's something that you went into the OTAs or came out of the OTAs not knowing that you didn't know going in?
Yeah, so I mean, big picture, I'll give kind of a boring answer. There wasn't anything crazy. We kind of knew the roster a lot better in year 2 of this regime. So it wasn't like, oh, wow, this is happening. Kind of guys were kind of way expected. The thing about this year, because I was looking back at my notes last year, they did a lot of 11 on 11. So it's not like this was like Brian Daboll's plan from day one. We're only going to do 7 on 7. But that is what they did this year. So that was a change. So to me, it's like a little harder to make any sort of like concrete conclusions based on what we saw because it's like literally just a passing camp. Because I think back to last year where, the first time they were exposed to like Wink's exotic pressures, it was kind of a nightmare for the offense. You're not seeing any of that in the spring because like literally there's no blitzing. So I kind of take a lot of the stuff, seeing from the offense with a grain of salt. Because again, I was looking back at what I wrote last year and I said, oh, they're throwing the ball deep and this is like a downfield passing attack. And obviously, that did not come to fruition. Now, I think personnel wise, you'd expect that to be different this year. But that's why with sort of like big sweeping observations, I don't have any that I think like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. The things I think will stick out more is just personnel, depth chart wise. I'll say one guy who stood out was Paris Campbell. Like he's kind of like the Richie James of last offseason. I mean, and he was a higher profile guy than Richie James, don't get me wrong. But like Richie James all last spring was like surprisingly getting reps with the ones and was getting fed the ball a lot. And you're like, all right, it's a spring, whatever. And then sure enough, he leads the team in receptions. And with Paris Campbell, it's like, he was a mid-level free agent signing. You figure it's a crowded room, but like he was Daniel Jones' most targeted receiver. Like I keep the stats during these practices, not because I think they mean anything, but just to have them. And he did have the most catches from Jones and drills, which again, take that for what it's worth. But like, I think it shows they had a chemistry off the bat. The fact that they're using him sort of in the Wan'Dale, Kadarius Toney role, where it's like he's lining up in the backfield, he's doing individual drills with running backs at the start of those periods. So all that stuff tells me like he's going to be a featured part of this offense. Now we'll see when Wan'Dale comes back how that affects him. But that definitely jumped out that he's probably going to be a bigger piece than I anticipated. And maybe we'll get into it, but then some of the position battle stuff, the ones we expected are the ones that seem to be, kind of the most contested right now.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I love that you brought up like Richie James. Like, okay, Paris Campbell's, maybe even this summer's Richie James. Because I was going to even ask, like, maybe it's Nick McCloud. Maybe it's even like Colin Johnson. I know was talked or a little early on, during this spring. I like wanted to know like who is going to be this summer's Richie James, the player that we're not talking about that maybe we should be talking about more that's going to get reps. So Paris Campbell seemed like he made a very strong finish to this past spring. So that's great. That's great to hear. You mentioned personnel-wise, that the Giants are throwing the ball deep all around the field, in spring. It's to be expected. But you mentioned just personnel-wise how that should be different this year. Darren Waller's name just seemed to be the most talked about name, whether it's through the media, through some questions, and then also just players answering questions, as he should be. So, general Darren Waller thoughts, how he seemed to be as a teammate, as a player, kind of like off the field, and obviously, what he was doing on the field too.
Yeah, I mean, the first impression, I don't know who was it McKinney or Slate? I think it was Slayton said, like, you picture a tight end, like, that's what they look like. I mean, he really is like an impressive physical specimen. He looks like kind of a basketball player. Obviously, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. He's all the things we knew. It's not like that was a revelation, but seeing it up close, I mean, it definitely is. He's moving at like a different speed and a different way than the other tight ends and even the other wide receivers in some respects. But yeah, so he definitely checked those boxes. I think they really managed his workload this spring. It's not about him going out and I was talking about the stats. They don't care if he leads the team in receptions in the spring. Obviously, it's all about having him ready for hopefully a 17-game season. But I think the other stuff you talked about is like people like lit up when they talked about him. Like, players are always going to be complimentary to their teammates. Coaches are always going to be complimentary to players. I don't put a ton of stock into it, but it felt like it was a little more with him. Like even when I was talking to guys, like I was at Saquon's camp, some teammates were there, and like they were like, this guy is like different. Like he's like a problem. Like he's like that. Like you can just tell there's a different level of how you talk about your teammates and how you talk about a guy who's like a little different. And he's at that category. Even Andy Bischoff, who was with him in Baltimore, was talking about even when he was going through all that, turbulent times in Baltimore, saying he's a great guy then, because you'd think, oh, how has he changed? He's like, no, he's always been a great guy. So people like really couldn't speak more highly of him. I've gotten to talk to him a little bit like at Saquon's camp, and he's just a very grounded guy. I mean, he's obviously been through so much in his life, so he has kind of a different perspective. So I think he's been a great addition on and off the field. I mean, obviously, from the moment they made that trade, the only question was durability. We won't know that answer for obviously a few months, but as far as like first impressions and all that, like yeah, he checked all the boxes, and people are really, really excited about him in that building.
Yeah, he seems like someone who will have some type of media career or like successful career after football. And then like you mentioned, like you watch him last year, and even at the end of the season when he came back playing for a team that was totally out of it, and he was still looking like a top 3 tight end, in those late games versus the Steelers. I think they had one on like Christmas Day. Like, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like this guy is different than anything we've seen in a Giants uniform since Odell, as a receiver. And the only question is durability. And I think that's why we like that trade so much, is because even with his I know they restructured some of his contract, but it was such like a low risk, high reward move that it's just exciting to see what that guy can do to their roster. Like he's a player who could come on, and every year we talk about like 2020 to 2021, how's the offense going to change? How's the offense? But it's like, no, this one player can actually change what an offense can do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're doing stuff with him like he's like the X wide receiver in some stuff. It's like of 3 receivers on the left, and he's the lone guy on the right. Like you saw that type of stuff with Kelsey, does that a lot in Kansas City. The Giants, I mean, maybe I'm trying to think with Ingram, maybe they did that a little bit, but the thing with Ingram was always like people are like, oh, they should move to wide receiver, but like he wasn't that dominant of a receiver, that great of a route runner, that type of thing where you couldn't do. Whereas Waller, I think you can legitimately line him up on cornerbacks and he can win those matchups at times. So I mean, he's just definitely a different type of guy.
Who do you think is going to be the starting trio of wide receivers, since we're on the receiving game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the injury with Wandale and Shepard, makes it a little harder to project. I mean, I don't think Shepard would probably be in that first group anyways. I think it'll be the three guys we saw all spring, which was Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins. Wandale is definitely the wild card. But I think it's, that's one of those positions where obviously you're going to rotate guys a lot. So I think maybe the question is like, which three wide receivers play the most snaps? And I would say those three. But I'm sure there'll be games where Wandale has a big role, and maybe as the season progresses, maybe. If he returns to form that he kind of started to show right before he got hurt last year, maybe he, surpasses Paris Campbell, or because they're going to have so many different funky combinations they can throw out there. Because I think they're going to still probably play a lot of 12 personnel because you're going to want Bellinger on the field. So it's like the things coaches always talk about being like matchup based and week to week. Like I think they actually have the personnel to do that this year, which I think a lot of times coaches say that, and it's harder to actually execute because you still want to get your best players on the field. I think they actually can do that this year, where some weeks Bellinger might play, 80% of the snaps. Some weeks it might be 20, and then same with the wide receivers. They're going to be probably different timeshares there.
We saw Shepard running routes yesterday, videos of that,
which is nuts.
He's simultaneously the most injury-prone and fastest healer in the NFL. When he signed his contract, vet minimum, no risk. So it's like, okay, fine. But my question since then has been, what is the plan for Shepard? Because Shepard's not a wide receiver 6, and I hate to always throw this in there, but it's like injury a lot of times answers these questions. But they're not going into the season preparing hey, we're going to be injured at wide receiver. What is the plan for at wide receiver if they're lucky enough to go in healthy with their 6 top guys?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's kind of one of the hardest things to figure out, and it made the spring. You didn't really get any clarity on it because obviously him and Wandale were off to the side. But you said Shepard was running, and seeing him run on Wednesday, run routes. He looks like a guy who's going to be ready for the start of camp. I think that's sort of his goal. There was maybe some talk we had, in the offseason, maybe they can stash him on PUP, and that always work out well because someone else probably will get hurt in the first 4 weeks, and then you have him ready to go. I don't see how that'd be possible unless he's totally on board with just sitting out all of camp and the beginning of the season. He looks like he's going to be healthy enough, so I don't think they'll actually be able to do that. And I think that as much as the injuries have been frustrating, he's still a really good receiver. Even you think the last year he only played with 2.5 games. He had to have been the leading receiver in those 2.5 games just based on.
Oh yeah, he was going to have a good year. He was going to have a really good year. But
yeah, I think I write it every camp. Probably won't do it this year, where it's Sterling Shepard is going to have a great year because it's really been tough to get out of the starting blocks with him with the injuries. But no, he's one of the 6 best receivers on this team, hands down. So I don't see any way he's not on the roster. Again, if you're assuming health, the 3 guys I mentioned, Wandale, Shepard, Jalen Hyatt, that feels like your 6 wide receivers. Now the problem there, you might say, well, none of those guys have any special teams value. Well, that's when you just carry an extra, linebacker, or Gary Brightwell makes the roster where you might not think he would. Stuff like that. I don't think they're going to squeeze Shepard off the roster because they want Jeff Smith to, be a gunner on 4 punts a game. So that's how I think it'll shake out. Maybe they keep 7, and that opens the door for someone like Colin Johnson or whatnot. But Shepard, to me, he is one of the best receivers on this team. Obviously, the caveat is if healthy. But again, if you're assuming he is going to be healthy going into the year, I think he makes the team.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating how they kind of work and navigate that. Because even saying, carrying Gary Brightwell on the team, they drafted Eric Gray, and that's 4 running backs, and then that's even taking a roster spot away from somebody. So it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. Speaking of running back, how do you like that radio transition? We're sticking with the radio transitions. I know we've been talking about it for so long. I know we are kind of getting tired talking about it, but we'll have some fun after this question. Saquon Barkley and the deadline and July 17th. It just feels like it's headed towards the tag. He talked about respect, and he talked about how the Giants being loyal to him is basically the reason why he deserves a contract extension, which in the business of this being a legit business is an interesting route to go about that I at least have some, unique opinions on. But who cracks? Who cracks at the deadline? Is Saquon Barkley going to crack at that deadline, just sign the tag, play on the $10 million, or are the Giants going to cave and give him that contract extension because they want to do right by him?
Yeah. So my stance on this has always been guardedly optimistic that they will get a deal done, and so if that happens, I think you'd have to say it's the Giants that will cave. But I don't think it's a terrible caving in the sense that they made offers to him, at least the average per year. I'm sure you've talked about it plenty, and we don't know the guarantees in those offers.
Right.
So let's just assume they make those guarantees legitimate, like, the number we've all thrown around, the $22 million guaranteed, which would be the equivalent of getting tagged for 2 straight years. We don't know what the guarantees were in the previous offers. Saquon, kind of read between the lines. He could have helped us out by clarifying that. But I think it's safe to assume that at least he doesn't view them as very strong guarantees. So I think if you're the team and you're willing to pay him, let's just say $12.5, $13 million a year, but you were trying to lowball the guarantees. Let's just say that's the issue, because no one's really been able to dig down and find out exactly what the issue is. I think they can probably come up on the guarantees, because to me, it's one thing if they were just going to walk away from him. They're like in March, so we're not going to pay running back. I think people act like that's Joe Schoen has that opinion. No, Joe Schoen was trying to pay this guy at least per year a lot of money, so it's not like he's adverse to paying him. So I just think if it comes down to you're getting July and both sides are dug in, do they really want to go through this thing where now Saquon has said his piece? He is upset. He dangled and not playing the season. I think there's no chance of that. But I don't think he's reporting on July 25th if he's on the tag. You know what I mean? So do you want to go through 6 weeks of questions until he shows up on September 1st? Like, Brian Table doesn't seem to enjoy that line of questioning. So again, if they're willing to commit to him and it's just a matter of upping the guarantees, to me, I think that they get that done. It doesn't feel like this is something that they're worlds apart on. The Giants have all the leverage though. So it's really a question is if you're Joe Schoen, yes, you have all that leverage. Do you need to exert all that leverage? You need to win this negotiation. Does the extra $5 million guarantee, whatever it may be, is that worth kind of what the fallout could be of having a disgruntled team captain guy who I talked about how players look at Darren Waller. They look at Saquon the same way. Everybody in that locker room wants Saquon to get paid. They think he's earned it. So I think GMs have to, kind of weigh that too. So again, it's hard to really dig in because none of us have been able to get the official guarantee figure to know exactly how far apart they are. But if they come back with a legitimate offer, let's say it's 22 plus guaranteed and it's about 13 million a year, and Saquon declines it, well, then he's a fool. But I think that if they come to that point in July, he would have to accept it.
How frustrating is that for I'm sorry, Bobby. How frustrating is that you can't, or nobody can really get that number, that guaranteed kind of per year?
Well, let me throw you some fan fiction that has to do with that. Are we sure that guaranteed number is bad? Because it hasn't leaked out, right? And we look at this and be like, $13 million a year with decent guaranteed money. Of course Saquon would take that. But Saquon has said, I'm not trying to reset the market. And everyone takes that line. Getting what Christian McCaffrey got is not resetting the market. It's just getting what the top guy get. And Saquon Barkley feels like he is right there with them. And honestly, deservedly so. He can, injuries are part of the conversation, but when he's healthy, he is top of the league and should believe he deserves that. And his agency should believe that too. So are we sure that the guaranteed number is not leaking out because Saquon's such a good guy, or is the guaranteed number just not bad? It's just the actual average annual value is what the hang up is. And Saquon's I'm not taking less than 16 mil. And if I am, I'm sure as hell not doing it until the day of the tag deadline.
Yeah, it's the Justice Star used the word. It is frustrating because obviously I want to get the information. I want to be the one to break it, but I'll settle for someone else getting it just so I can analyze the situation more clearly. One of these national guys, I don't care who it is. I want someone to just get that information so then we can at least react with the full picture. To your point, I think definitely. I wrote this week. There's some you use the word fan fiction or people have kind of rallied over some talking points. I think are just off base. It's fun to kill him and his agent for turning down these offers again. We don't know the guarantees. He made the right call to turn down the in-season offer. And we know that definitively because they upped their offer after the season. So he obviously would have left money on the table if he accepted that offer at that point. He had gone through a half season of risking injury. He was playing like a top running back in the league. So it was a smart decision, especially if the guarantees weren't strong, to turn that one down. Now, obviously, when you get to March, he's 6 minutes away from hitting the open market. So maybe he played chicken there and said, hey, I don't think they're going to get Daniel Jones done. I'm going to have 32 teams bidding on me. Maybe I come back to the Giants, but I'm going to have a huge-ass offer from some other team they're going to compete with. And obviously, he lost that gamble if that's indeed what it was. But so, if he wanted $16 million, if he thought he could get that from the Bears or the Dolphins or whoever on the open market, well, now he has to understand that that's just out the window. And he said many times on Sunday that, they have all the leverage. He's kind of it sucks, but he acknowledges that reality. He's not oblivious to that. So, if he thinks he's going to get $60 million a year, he has to know that that ship has sailed. And the thing that really crushes him is obviously he can get tagged again next year. So then you're getting $22 million over the next 2 years. So now you're talking $11 million a year. So if their offer is for more than that and the guarantees are legitimate, I don't see how he could turn it down. So again, maybe if he was unreasonable in March, I can understand it. But I think when we come down to the deadline, it's just basic arithmetic here. Like $22 million over 2 years is obviously not as much as if you're going to get a 3-year deal that's for 13 a year, because you're not going to cut him after this year anyways. So I think that's what I hear what you're saying, but I think that at this point he'd have to lower his expectations, even if that's what the case. But yeah, and again, like the guarantee money, I think it's crazy that if it is low, they haven't leaked it. You talk to people close to him, it's like he really does believe in this good guy thing, and like he doesn't want to kind of play dirty, and that's why I think you heard he was so upset about the leak things that he felt made him look greedy. And I think the line he used a couple of times is like, family business is, family business. And you heard Brandon Brown say that.
Yeah.
I don't know this for a fact. I wouldn't be shocked if when they had some of these talks, like, hey, like maybe Joe Shane said this to him. Again, I'm speculating, like, hey, family business, we're going to keep this all in house. Let's get ugly. So then if you're Saquon, I can see why you'd be outraged when there are leaks. Because I mean, as he said, they're not coming from me, and I believe him. He's not putting leaks out to make himself look bad. But I think it's been a real big PR swing and a miss to not put out, if there is something negative about the offers, like the good guy role, it's you kind of already lost that battle. So now I think you at least have to try and swing public opinion. But if indeed the guarantees are low, he's dug in on not kind of playing that game. And again, I think it's a mistake, but he obviously wants to live with the consequences.
What's crazy is I don't think anyone would think he's a bad guy for leaking that. It's like the most basic.
No, that's what your agent is. That's their job. It just shows up. Rap sheet tweets, oh, well, here's the hang up. And I don't think you look bad at all. And I think he does look bad now, because I would say 75% of the Giants population is like, what an idiot. He turned down $13 million a year, turned down $14 million a year. And without knowing the full context of those numbers, it's kind of tough to put that toothpaste back in the tube. And I think he's, kind of lost that window. He should have done it months ago. Again, assuming the guarantees are low, and it's not your point where he's just like being totally unreasonable and thinks that the Giants should still give him $60 million a year, which that definitely won't happen.
Yeah, I'm ready for it to be over. So at least it's kind of like, all right, July 17th is, if it happens, it'll happen July 17th. If it doesn't happen, it'll happen July 17th.
Yeah, it's not like one of these holdouts where he has nothing to gain after July 17th. Even if they wanted to a total change of heart, they can't. That's the deadline. They can't give him a 5-year deal on September 1st, which you see sometimes happen. So if he's holding on after that, it's really just kind of to show his displeasure.
Yeah, it's just we know, okay, he's not going to be at training camp. He will show up week 1. There's no way this guy's passing up millions of dollars and missing games, especially if he's not even willing to leak out guaranteed money. He's not missing games.
Right.
Nick McCloud, he's been a surprising name now. Pinnock and Belton, who were two guys who you'd think have been on the sideline. Do you think he's actually battling for that starting job, or is it just like, hey, Pinnock and Belton are on the sideline, Owens is a rookie, McCain is new type thing?
No, I do. I think, I kind of touched on the position battles, and I think that's the one that's the most wide open, because I think there are 4 legitimate contenders for that spot next to McKinney. McCain, he had a hell of a day the other day. He had a picked off Jones, he had a pick 6 on Tyrod Taylor, he had a broken up pass. So he's shown something at his minicamp practices. But obviously, Belton and Pinnock's the guy I would have as the favorite, just based on the fact that when kind of push came to shove, they went to him last year when McKinney was out. But he's been on the side, but he was doing a good amount. So I think he'll be totally ready for the summer. They've been pretty cautious with offseason injuries in this regime. Belton, I know, went on a podcast and said that he had collarbone, another surgery, and he dealt with that all second half of the year. He even had a shoulder surgery, so he had 2 surgeries. But talking to him at Saquon's camp, he said he'll be ready for camp. So I think it's a really interesting battle. But McCloud is the guy that I kind of kick myself for sleeping on it, because they clearly liked him last year. Like, they found ways to get him on the field, whether it was like sometimes he'd be the big nickel, like playing in the slot against teams that use bigger wide receivers. He obviously played outside, he'd mix in there. I think even in that Philly game at the end of the year, he did get a few snaps at safety. So seeing how they used him this spring was very reminiscent of how they used Julian Love last year. Now, I don't know that he's going to win that job and play every snap at safety the way Julian Love did, but the way he moves around, that's what reminded me of Love. So even to say Pinnock wins the job, like when they're in nickel and dime, I would not surprised to see McCloud on the field a lot. Like he was playing down in the box again, 7-on-7, but just you're positioning guys because they want to get a look at him those spots, and so maybe he's a guy they use a lot in blitzes. And you remember Love was like a pseudo inside linebacker at times last year. I think you can see McCloud fill that role, and I kind of like that because it's like you had sort of Tony Jefferson and Landon Collins in that sub linebacker role, but McCloud gives you a little more coverage. So I think he's a guy that definitely, I mentioned Paris Campbell off the top, but another guy who, like personnel wise and usage wise, like, okay, like that's someone that I kind of underestimated coming into the spring. And I think he is going to have a big role. Whether he starts, I don't know. I mean, I think that'll be a fun battle. That'll be the number one battle, I think, in terms of having no clue who's going to win. Whereas I think Schmitz is going to win center. I think Beavers ends up winning the inside linebacker job.
Really?
And I do. I mean, I don't know. It's just like Jared Davis. I feel like the upside is pretty limited. And I mean, I know they've loved Beavers, going back to last summer. So I think, assuming he's healthy, he was doing some stuff, like he was on the side, but he was, involved in walkthroughs and stuff. I think he'll win that, but that's definitely up for grabs. I'm trying to think, is there any other pressing position battles? I mean, so then center, if Schmitz wins that, I would think Bredesen's probably the favorite at left guard because Zudu played left guard when Bredesen was at center. And the slot corner, that's the other one.
I want to ask you this. This is not like asking for analysts. This is me asking you for a favor. Azudu was drafted high 3rd round pick last year. John Michael Smith is going to be their starting center, most likely. Ben Bredesen performed as their second best offensive lineman last year next to Andrew Thomas. Obviously not a high bar on last year's line. Can you guys press the fuck out of them if they're playing Mark Lewinsky over Josh Azudu or Ben Bredesen? Because I know that's going to drive me nuts. If Mark Lewinsky starts the season out like he did last year.
Sure, we'll make that deal. Yeah, it's fun to always have like one pressure point on the O-line. Like a couple years ago, it's like, I feel like he playing Solder, and
it was insane. It was insane that they would continue to play Solder. I will never get over that. Like, and it's not some ringing endorsement of Matt Parrott. It's just like it was insane that they continue to play Solder.
It was great. I mean, that season was obviously a debacle, but like the tweets would get the most engagement on game day when I would just tweet out the 5 starting offensive linemen and warm up.
Oh yeah, we were waiting for it.
Lose their mind every week. So maybe that becomes the thing with Lewinsky this year. But no, I mean, I think Azudu and Bredesen will have a competition there. Maybe they do the rotation again because I think they still are high on Azudu, but I think Bredesen's probably earned a spot. And then why not just move one of them to right guard? We didn't see very much of that at all in the spring, but it's offensive line play without pads. So I think maybe the summer. I'd be surprised if they don't start Lewinsky, but maybe someone in the summer, kind of forces their hand there and changes their mind.
Well, even with Feliciano last year, it was like you saw how the league valued those two. Nick Gates got like 4 or 5 times the amount of money, and they rotated the 2 better players in Gates and Bredesen over Feliciano. And I lose my mind over that, and people are like, well, they're not that good. But it's like that type of shit matters. Like it can make the difference in 2 plays in a game. So if I can already see it, like my thing. Even for winning games, if Lewinsky's bad to start the season like it was last year, I'm going to lose my mind that one of Azudu or Bredesen will be on the bench. We'll finish off with this. Did you have any hope that Mike Groh would show like even 1% enthusiasm for your position coach interviews this offseason?
He's tough, man. He's tough. He has he's not super interested in doing those. And it's like I don't usually go to him a lot because Bobby Johnson is great. Shake Tierney's pretty interesting. Andy Bischoff's a super nice guy. And he'll actually have much bigger crowds this year because his position's a lot more interesting with Waller. And then the new running back coach seemed like a nice guy. But the problem with Groh is he coaches a juicy position. Like obviously last year, there's a ton of questions about like Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay. Now this year with the big room he has with Hyatt. But yeah, he I wouldn't say he's the most enthusiastic about doing those.
It's not even maybe not even enthusiasm. He's just angry. It's like he's like angry, like personally offended by the questions that you guys ask him.
Yeah, I was like stumbling on my. I don't know if they made it on the YouTube. I was like stumbling on my words. I was like nervous. I don't get that way with anybody, but it's like he's looking at you like, man, I hate everything you're about to say. So I'm like prefacing like, oh, I know you won't like this question, but it's like ridiculous. But I kind of got caught in the glare yesterday and stumbled.
Who is your favorite position coach to talk to outside of Jerome Henderson?
Yeah, because he's going. Andre Patterson is great. He's kind of got that old school, like, and he's very secure. So he's willing to say some stuff. Kind of good anecdotes. Like, obviously, very good at what he does. But he says stuff that's just kind of interesting. You don't always think about. I think I saw you guys actually latched onto it where he talked about how he does a cut up of every defensive lineman's good run film, bad run film, good pass rush film, bad pass rush film, and then they sit in the room in the spring and just watch one guy's that day. So like whatever day it was, I think Dex spoke, that's what you saw it, I think. They watched Leo's like good rush film. And so they're breaking it down, and he's talking about how it benefits Leo, because obviously he's seeing, oh, this is what I need to do better. But then all the other guys can learn from it. And like, so he just drops stuff like that that's interesting, and you learn. So yeah, he's really good. I mean, he's strong. I mean, Drew Wilkins is good. They have a pretty good kind of crew of assistant coaches as far as providing some insight, being good talkers. Like you said, Jerome Henderson's, he's great. But I think Patterson actually might be better, because he gives a little. Jerome will kind of only toe the line as far as sort of giving stuff away, where I think Patterson's a little less filter, and he'll just kind of tell you how it is, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's kind of like I watch them all on YouTube, and it's like they're all pretty enjoyable, except for Mike Groh, which again, like you said, it's like I want to hear, like, there's actual stuff to be learned from Mike Groh, and he doesn't give you anything. But it is what it is. Justin, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I got one more. It's not necessarily a sexy question to really end off on, but Brandon Brown spoke in front of the media too, and I know you and Research Rick, we call him Research Rick, NYG fan in Charlotte online.
Yeah.
You two really kind of like analyze like the front office stuff and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And Brandon Brown went into like the process of like Marquise Pendleton, who was an area scout, pointed out Deontay Banks a while back. Pendleton was promoted to a pro scout, after this draft. So, he's talking about the collaboration as like Giants fans, and at least me, who cares about the everyday business of it. It's awesome. And it's cool. Like seeing the collaboration that takes place in the building, how they're building up the front office. So I want to get some of your thoughts on that. And, maybe even just how far like this organization, this front office has gone as the years you have gone on that you've been covering the team.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I tweeted out Brandon Brown. He had that really comprehensive answer on like the scouting report of Deontay Banks, how they kind of discovered him, how they worked through him, how everyone saw him, and just boom, 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 and like every step along the process. And it was really insightful. I tweeted out, obviously a lot of Giants fans ate it up, but I think it must have been a fan from another team. Like, yeah, bro, every team does the same process. And I'm like, well, I don't know that you would have got that type of answer, the previous regime. And I don't even know really with Jerry Reese. I didn't cover him as much during the draft because he was out pretty early in my tenure. But no, so it was definitely a stark difference from the answers you would get on process from, the Dave Gettleman days. No, I mean, first of all, Brandon Brown was like really impressive, because the only other time we spoke to him in an interview setting was last like August during camp. And you could tell he was a little nervous. It was probably the first time he'd really done it. He hasn't been on the job that long, probably, worried about probably saying the wrong thing. And you could see he was at the podium this time, and he was very much more of a presence. He struck you more as like, oh, this guy is going to be a future GM. Whereas last year, like, oh, this guy seems a little young, a little green. But I think a year on the job certainly helped. And maybe it's sort of like, his agents in his ear, like, hey, it's time to start auditioning. Because obviously there wasn't as many GM openings this year, but he didn't get any interviews. So it's like, you need to really sell yourself. He does love a lot of like the kind of, it almost feels like corporate jargon. Like he throws a lot of those, like those words and just kind of like buzzwords.
He threw out the family business line too, which I thought you mentioned that earlier.
Did. Yeah, he did. But he has a lot of stuff that like I feel like you hear in corporate America, which like I'm not even familiar with. But it's just some of the terms he uses of processes and stuff like that. But I did think he provided some insight, and I thought that Banks answer was really tremendous, because it just really took you inside the process in terms of every step that goes into it, and it makes you wonder how teams mess up picks, because there are so many hands involved and so many people that have a hand in the process. But then to your greater question about the front office, I mean, obviously it's a deep front office when you just look at guys' resumes, like getting Ryan Cowden, who has been a hot GM candidate, and he has what's the Dwight Schrute title he has there, like a special advisor to the GM. And so I don't know exactly what that role entailed, but again, it's a guy who's certainly been around. I think he was like director of player personnel, or he might even have a bigger title than that in Tennessee. So he certainly kind of knows how the sausage is made, and was in Tennessee, which has been a good organization for most of his time there. So just kind of adding people like that, you think as long as there's not too many cooks in the kitchen, it's only beneficial. I mean, Dennis Hickey, who is a guy who I don't think externally gets a lot of attention, but like Joe Shane can't go a presser without mentioning him. He's kind of his right-hand man. That's a former GM, and he's kind of in a assistant director of player personnel, like not a huge title. So like they have a really deep roster there. And I think when you hear them speak, it just instills some confidence. Like with Gettleman, it was all kind of folksy and like, you didn't really get to understand the process. So listen, they might miss on every draft pick. I have no idea. Obviously the jury's still kind of out on last year's class. We know nothing about this year's, but just hearing them, there's like, oh, there's an intelligent plan and how they, arrive on these decisions makes sense. And I think that's at least a big first step. And then obviously you see how good they are as evaluators, but I think there's definitely a lot of competence, and you just you feel good, I'm sure, if you're a Giants fan, listening to the way Brandon Brown talks about how they do things.
Yeah, that's where I was like, I am excited about this regime, but I also like warn Giants fans. It's like, yeah, I know the last 4 years of Gettleman, like you didn't hear shit like this, but that's kind of what I love about football. Is like you can have all the right process. Can you evaluate a player from Southern Miss and see if he's worthy of, like, that's really what it comes down to, is like how well do you do in the draft with the process? Because there's a lot of, like, most teams don't have a Dave Gettleman type, like they're all mostly and even then, like, as much as we joke on Dave Gettleman, like he's not a total moron.
They drafted some good players, no doubt.
It's like, yeah, they're smart. To get to this level, you have to have some level of being a smart human being. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's just, can you draft good players? And that's the yet to be seen for this regime. And but they got the coaching staff right, and we like what we've seen out of them. Duggan, appreciate you coming on. Next time we'll see you will be in the van at training camp. I'm already booking you for that. There's no way out of it at this point. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, I gotta start my Toney Award campaign. People have to remember I'm back on the ballot this year, right? Are you scrapping it?
I don't know. It kind of seems like here. All right, here's the issue, and you're not gonna like this. I don't want it just to alternate between you and Art every year.
I'll say I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I know you. So maybe we'll just keep it. But just not talk about it as much. Because last year every time we had a reporter on, we talked about it. So maybe it's just this year, it's like we'll just quietly do it.
Can we just continue to give out gift cards? I mean, I'm all right with that.
Yeah. So we'll see. But it will be always like people like change the name. Like, no, we will be 70 years old. Perfect. And it'll be the Kadarius Toney. You'll be getting the reporters won't even know who Kadarius Toney is, and we will be giving them a trophy with Kadarius Toney's face on it. All right, Duggan, appreciate you. Go check out The Athletic, and we'll see you in the van.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you to Dan Duggan from The Athletic. Nice little conversation. I really like the Darren Waller piece. We're going to make a social media clip out of that. Boom! This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Before we get out of here, got to talk about BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing. And we're changing, like the Giants offense. Boom. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. I seriously think there are two things in my life that I think I need to give BetterHelp a try for. Number one, my mood is severely, unhealthily impacted by how I do in my bowling league. The last 2 weeks, I feel like I haven't been in the best of mood. Tuesday, I have a good night of bowling. I'm as new as a flower that has sprung in spring. I am in a great mood. I'm going here, I'm going there. I'm in a much better mood now. So that's not healthy. And then the second thing is I hate the off season because when we're not doing things and when we're not putting out tweets and when we're not putting out more videos, like I feel like I'm a failure. So I need to work on those things, and BetterHelp is going to help me with that. And it's convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/TalkinGiants today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TalkinGiants. Bobby Skinner, you'll be glad you did, and I'll be glad I did too.
Breaking news.
Don't do this to me.
I mean, this is real breaking news. This isn't fake, but it's not like, don't do this to me.
You wrote down, I saw you before we recorded, write down a reminder of something that you wanted to say at the end of the show.
Well, we're doing way too early draft week next week.
This feels very planned. Oh, I thought you were going to try to trick me again.
No, but so we're going to do way too early draft week next week with Grump, so I'm excited for that. Craig Carton is leaving the fan. He's taking that Fox Sports thing.
Yeah, I thought that was known.
It was known that it was a possibility, but now it's official.
I think he's got to. I mean, this is not me being a jerk to Craig, but I think he's got to do it. Doesn't he have to still pay off like debts?
I think legally, I shouldn't be sharing this. I think legally he's not like allowed to turn down a bigger contract, basically.
Yeah.
I think I know who's going to take his spot at Mendes too, so I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
Wait, we have to talk about that. I'm
well,
actually very curious.
We can't talk about it on record.
I know. That's why we're going to hang up, and I'm going to ask you about it.
But what if that person listens to this and told me not to tell anybody?
No, we're going to hang up. I'm going to end recording, and then I'm going to ask you about it off air.
I'm not going to answer because it's in confidentiality. and it's not even a sure thing either. It's just there's been some hints at it. So I'll be excited to see Snacks on the middays with Evan Roberts.
Can you imagine?
It wouldn't be bad, honestly. Like that's where he belongs.
And in WFA, you can get away with the word. You know, I think they openly say bitch on there.
Yeah, you can say bitch on the radio.
Ass, and they don't say it on ESPN. They don't. Well, I mean, Michael Kay, Don LeGreca, Peter Rosenberg, classy individuals. They're heathens at WFAN.
So, as we finish up minicamp, here's something for the Giants players. Don't get arrested.
Oh.
You know, people asked us who, we got the question, who could best chance be arrested? I actually have an answer.
Sure.
Tommy DeVito.
The mob?
That. Also, someone sent me a DM about Tommy DeVito, and listen, no truth to it, but it was this guy's a scumbag. But it was probably just some fake. But
I don't believe it.
I don't believe it either. I'm just joking. I just made that up.
Oh, why did you make that up?
Source, I made it up.
Why are you slandering Tommy DeVito's character?
No, I'm just giving the people what they want. They want to know. And Homer Jones passed away. He was 82. I didn't know this. Homer Jones created the
spike?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Now,
Touchdown
I did
spike.
know we actually used because now we're in our summer countdown to the New York Giants football. Which, by the way, my countdown app messed with me. That
you missed 93, and you had a great opportunity to post Jay Alford, and you didn't.
No, I posted Chase Blackburn for 93, but I was one day early because my countdown app, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. It'd say 91 days and 6 hours, and that's 92 days. So some other account, I guess, also does countdowns. Was you stick to podcasts. I'll do the countdown. Which he was right. He was right, and
Big Blue
I don't
United?
know. It was. No, if it was Big Blue Night, I would have went off. So he was right that we were wrong on the days, but it also bothered me. It's we've been doing the countdown since 2019.
And also, it's not a unique thing.
We started the countdown. But he was right, so I couldn't complain.
Homer Jones.
But we use Homer, the longest touchdown in New York Giants history is the Victor Cruz 99-yarder, which, by the way, was the last 99-yard touchdown in NFL history. The second longest, Homer Jones had a 98-yard touchdown in 1968. So, obviously old, so it wasn't some huge tragedy, but it's always want to mention when someone part of the Giants, once a Giant, always a Giant, go. So, shout out Homer Jones, a name I'll always remember. All right, Justin, anything else before we come back next week for Way Too Early Draft Week?
No, excited to see my friend, the football grump. Yeah,
very excited. I'm actually going to start getting into some of those players. We're going wide receiver heavy. I think we're going 5 wide receivers, 2 interior offensive linemen, a tackle, and a tight end. All right, so we'll see you guys then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.